first following that surprise new polling that suggests Nigel Farage would comfortably win the seat of Clacton in Essex, the first and only seat to have ever been won by UKIP. Should Nigel Farage run for a seat at the next election? And should he take over Reform UK in order to spearhead another political revolution? Let's get the views of tonight's newsmaker, former Government Minister and robust Reform UK supporter Ann Widdecombe. Ann, lovely to see you. Do you think Nigel should run for a seat at the next election?
Well, if he does, of course, he'll have to concentrate on that seat. And I would much rather have Nigel, who, by the way, is the president of Reform. I would much rather have Nigel campaigning throughout the country, campaigning in the Red Wall seats, campaigning in Essex seats, campaigning where people really like what we say. And he can't do that if he's going to be tied down to one constituency. So, yes, Nigel for PM, fine, not that way.
So do you think, I mean, you know Nigel well, do you suspect that Nigel will not run? He will not take this opportunity at the next election? Do you think it's unlikely he'll run?
I think the more likely scenario is that he will spend the next election campaigning up and down the country for reform. And that is where he has always been successful, when he's able to campaign in the country. And to be tied down to one constituency, I think is not advisable. But in the end, it's a matter for Nigel.
So you're suggesting it wouldn't really be a big enough platform. Now, Richard Tice is a formidable performer, Anne, and a good friend of mine and yours. I'm sure he could play a key role going forward. But should Nigel take over as leader so that he can spearhead yet another political revolution?
No, Nigel is already the president of Reform. Nigel will already, I'm assuming, be campaigning up and down the country during Reform. It doesn't matter whether, during the election, it doesn't matter whether he has the title leader or not. Everybody knows that Nigel backs Reform. And, you know, the leader has an awful lot of admin stuff to do. I would much rather see Nigel on the campaign trail. That is where he is superb.
Now, Anne, the Foreign Secretary David Cameron has said that Britain could strike Houthi targets in Yemen again if the rebel group continue to attack ships in the Red Sea. Writing in the Telegraph today, he said, "We will work with allies. We will always defend the freedom of navigation. And crucially, we will be prepared to back words with actions." Is he right to make this threat, Anne?
I think he is right to stand very firm on the threat that there is to shipping, because that does threaten us directly. That's not just a matter of Iran. That threatens us directly. However, my suspicions about David Cameron are always roused when it comes to foreign policy, because he's always seemed to want his war. He wanted to bomb Syria. Parliament stopped him from bombing Syria, but he wanted to do it. Now, the difference, of course, between protecting shipping, for heaven's sake, at sea, and what went on before with Iraq and Afghanistan and all the rest of it is, we've got no boots on the ground. We aren't going to have body bags coming back through wooden bassett. It's a different sort of engagement, but he's dead right to protect shipping. I've no quarrel with him there. Otherwise, we're all going to be affected.
We conducted a poll yesterday, and a majority of my viewers and listeners have no appetite for a military involvement in the Middle East, another commitment, another conflict, lost lives, resources. Are they right?
If what we were being asked to do is simply to go poking around in somebody else's civil war, which is what we seem to spend an awful lot of time doing under previous administrations, then I would say they are right. But shipping affects us. And if there is a threat to shipping, there is a threat to us. So he is right to be taking the line that he is taking in that respect, and only in that respect, because I don't think he's a great foreign secretary.
Why do you say that he's not a great foreign secretary, Anne?
Well, I mean, I think, if you actually look at his record in foreign affairs, it's been abysmal. I mean, take, for example, what happened before Brexit. He said he was going off to the EU. He was going to renegotiate the treaty. He was going to come back with great concessions. And then we'd all vote on the basis of this new treaty. He came back with absolutely nothing. He couldn't even manage that. As I've already mentioned, there was his attempt to bomb Syria. He is not a good foreign secretary. I believe, or at least I believe that he should not be foreign secretary.
And are you concerned that his history as a supporter of Remain could influence the government's approach to Brussels?
It already has influenced it. You know, I mean, honestly, appointing David Cameron, who was the architect of Project Fear, appointing David Cameron to be Foreign Secretary was, as I described it in the Express, very good column, by the way, every Wednesday, simply sending Brexiteers a reverse victory sign. That's what they were doing, you know. And already he's getting closer to Europe. Already he's getting involved in the European Defence Union on a much closer basis. The man is still a confirmed Remainer, and he hasn't accepted Britain's position as outside the EU completely. It will take reform, and only reform, to actually make it clear that we are a sovereign state and we are outside the EU. David Cameron hasn't got that yet. He still hopes, I think, probably deep down, that it will be reversed.
And not only is your Wednesday column in the Express unmissable, so are your Sunday night appearances on Mark Dolan tonight. We look forward to seeing you in a week's time. My thanks to former Government Minister and broadcaster Ann Widdecombe.